Janene Gordon, a career of firsts. Before 1971, the attire for federal law enforcement agents was pretty standard: a suit, tie, and a hat. After all, federal agents and G-men were just that, all men. So when Janene Gordon was offered a job interview, she was instructed to
show up with my hat and tie for the interview.
Well, she didn't. Although 25 years later, she did show up with a hat at the Women in Federal Law Enforcement Conference that marked the 75th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement. Just as those women were pioneers, so was Janene Gordon. She was one of the first women hired as a federal law enforcement agent when she was appointed a United States Postal Inspector in September of 1971. Janene wanted to be a cop ever since she was a freshman in high school. Her first venture into law enforcement was a job with Macy's as a store detective while in college.
I started working at a department store as a security guard. Store detective is what we used to call them. Loved that job. I stayed there for 3 years while I was in college.
In 1970, she graduated from Sacramento State College.
Public administration with a specialization in police science because there was no criminal justice major.
Shortly before graduation, her boyfriend at the time spotted an announcement that the post office was hiring inspectors.
I don't remember having a clue what I was getting into when I signed up for Postal, to be honest with you. I went ahead and applied.
And she was selected as one of the first women ever to be appointed as a federal law enforcement officer. She was offered the position of postal inspector on a Friday afternoon in the summer of 1971.
She says, "No, I'm sorry, at this time we have not hired another female." And so Monday when I called right away, 8 o'clock their time, so 5 o'clock my time about, and accepted the position.
But by the time she accepted the job on Monday morning, she found out she was not alone. There was another female accepted.
And at that time I was told, good news, we got another female that's going to be in class. And that's when I first heard that Janene Curry was hired.
Then it was on to the Postal Inspection Service Academy. Being the first females in what was an all-male job made for some interesting situations.
The staff there realized they had no changing room for us. It was all set up for men. Because I think that they were probably as dumbstruck as we were at times as to why things were happening, you know.
But Janene and Jane were there to stay.
At that point, that's when I finally told them, I said, I don't want to go have these 1-hour classes with some instructor. I want to be in the class. And they made me prove that I was slapping just as hard as the men were.
As Chief Postal Inspector Cotter noted,
there are many areas in which women can operate not only as well as, but perhaps more effectively than male inspectors.
As the training continued, Janene felt that she did.
By that time, though, I kind of already, I think, made a good impression on the department. I'd already shown my ability to handle myself.
And after a surveillance in the field,
he was convinced we were going to be made, and because this guy, the carrier, had seen us several times, we thought. But every time he acted like, you know, he was coming in our direction, I would just move over and act like I was his date.
Her fellow male inspectors started to appreciate their female counterparts.
At that point, I think they started to realize the importance of having females, you know.
In December of 1971, the first female postal inspectors graduated from the academy. Now it was time for the newly minted inspector, with an annual salary of $9,431, to head to her first assignment in the San Francisco Division, an internal crimes assignment.
In the academy, we were told, the guy came in and he says, I'm going to be instructing you on an area that you guys will probably never, ever be involved in. There's very few inspectors that ever get involved in their first assignment being an airport or a airplane crash. You probably will never see them in your career, but I'm going to give you this information anyhow. I got assigned to the San Francisco airport, and in my first year, there were 3 plane crashes.
And there were still obstacles to overcome. Working internal crimes required climbing ladders to get into the lookout galleries, but females were required to wear dresses. This presented a problem.
When I first started in internal crimes, when we'd go up into the lookouts, the catwalks are up above the post office, we were still required to wear skirts or dresses. We made a pact with two other guys that I was working with most of the time. The men would climb the ladders to go up into the lookouts first. They would go up so that they wouldn't have any chance to look up the skirts. And then when we'd come out of the lookouts, I would always go down first. So that was to avoid any kind of inappropriate viewings, I guess you would say.
Then finally, common sense prevailed.
Finally, it dawned on people that it might be smart to let us wear pants when we were working in the lookouts. But that was the only time it was granted.
The new inspector excelled in just about everything. Just about.
I took probably 3 rolls of pictures, and none of them came out. It was pretty intense, too. I mean, it was like, you got no evidence, because there were no pictures of it other than what the newspapers took. We all had to have photography training after that.
After learning to take usable photos, Inspector Gordon moved to a fraud assignment, where she learned that when you execute a search warrant, you have to inventory all items that you seize.
And I remember my boss telling me, don't take all of it, because we got in the house and he had thousands of books, and I took all of it. Then I had to document all of it, and I wished I would have listened to him. Really would have listened to him. He's wiser than I was at that time. I was young. One of my first big cases. I took them all. I mean, I backed up a postal truck. Take them out of there. Yeah, it was bad.
In addition to having to prove herself to other inspectors in the division, she had to do it all over at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
We went in with a child molest case and pornography, and he wanted me to leave the room. And he didn't want to view it with me in there. And I said, I'm an agent, I'm not leaving this room, And I said, I want you to think of something, that when you're watching these videos that I've already seen, I said, while you're watching them, keep in mind if, you have a sister, a mother, a child, while you're watching them. And he prosecuted and was one of the first ones that was really accepted for prosecution. And I think it's because I'm hoping that it was because I put that in the forefront of his brain that this could be a family member.
And also with customers.
Secretary would send a message in to me that there's somebody on the phone that needs to talk to an inspector, and I'd get on the line and he said, no, I want to talk to a real inspector. And I said, I am a real inspector. No, I want to talk to a real inspector. They meant a male, right?
As Inspector Gordon became established and new female inspectors joined the division, she became a mentor to them.
I wanted to take Janet with me, and they didn't want me to, and I said, I want to. And so I asked her if she wanted to go out with me that night to sit in a car and do surveillance. It ended up being that the guys really appreciated it after the fact, because we were another set of eyes, and we could get real close. They couldn't. And it was just like two girls talking in a car after, just reminiscing about what we did that night type thing.
Then it was time for another first. The Inspection Service rolled out a new program in 1979. It was called the Consumer Protection Program. And Inspector Gordon became the first practitioner of this public relations and fraud prevention outreach in San Francisco.
I didn't think I would like that job, because anytime the boss would come in and ask me would I give a presentation before I got the job, I would tell him, I was going to take that day off. I didn't want to go in front of the public. And then once I got the job and got the training, I found out I was a ham. I loved it. I loved giving talks.
Because of her outgoing personality, she was a natural. Then another new program was unveiled, narcotics investigations involving employees. She was selected to work undercover in this new investigative area.
I went from public relations and being on the news and being a high-profile San Francisco person to undercover work. It wasn't the smartest thing, but I loved it. There were sticky situations, but I got through them, and you had to talk your way out of a paper bag, and I learned how to do that, so that helped with Polygraph later, but I just loved undercover work.
The work was challenging and dangerous, and there wasn't much of a support system.
My debriefing was, well, so how do you feel today? You know, and I'm going, I feel fine. And while we were being debriefed, though, I said, you know, there was one point. You guys were right in your timing in getting me out. You became a part of their lives, too, and then you end up having to arrest them. So it was an area that I think that if we would have continued, we probably would have lost more agents that stayed in it too long, and they weren't properly handled in the assignment.
Janene Gordon was a pioneer, having been a first woman several times. Now it was time for one more.
I didn't know a whole lot about Polygraph, but I hold a master's degree, and it was probably the hardest course I've ever gone through in my life. Even including the inspection service, which was a little tough on me.
The polygraph training lasted 3 months.
It was intense. Course was anywhere from 7 o'clock in the morning till 6, 7 o'clock at night, Monday through Saturday sometimes.
And that was just the start. Extensive on-the-job training followed.
200 exams, 2-year internship, whichever came first.
During this part of her career, she achieved another first. 20 years in law enforcement. The first female agent of any federal law enforcement agency to reach 20 years on the job.
On my 20th anniversary, the chief had come out to congratulate me and attend my little 20th anniversary party. And actually, before he got back to DC that night, a bomb went off. It was a major bomb case for us. It was up near Eagle River in Kujiak. And as soon as I heard the bomb went off, I contacted the INC and offered polygraph services because it was part of my territory. I did my last 20 years of my career was polygraph.
Then on to the next phase, retirement.
2004, 33, little over 33.
But she was not done.
I started my own little company in 2005. I only did one test the first year. All the work except for doing applicants for different law enforcement jobs has been in defense work, which is totally different than what we're used to.
As Janene Gordon looked back, she spoke about some of the highlights of her career. One that stood out was her presentation at the National Postal Forum.
Believe it or not, I just felt like a queen there. I felt like I had I realized, I think that day, how big and interesting the Postal Service really is and what kind of a job I really had.
As a presenter, she wanted to make sure her session was well attended. But it was there that she was caught soliciting.
We went around soliciting business people that were attending the forum to come to our presentation. You won't regret it. We got, blah, blah, blah. We're going off on everybody. And the chief caught us soliciting. We had the place packed, and I know the chief was over the moon. I mean, it was just one of those proud moments. And that's one thing I know about our department. You had a case, you worked the case. It was yours. And that brought a lot of pride. I mean, you can't start something and not finish it in a successful manner and not feel pride behind it. There's just no way.
And then there was WIFL, Women in Federal Law Enforcement. The Postal Inspection Service hosted the 1995 conference in Washington, D.C.
Well, I had gone to some WIFLs before the Inspection Service put it on in 1995. We hosted it then, and I was lucky enough to be chosen as part of the committee that set it up and organized it. And there's 900 women all dressed in suits, very professionally. I mean, it was just a gorgeous presentation of professionalism. Talk about a proud moment. No, it was just great.
A pioneer in so many areas, Janene Gordon had these sage words of wisdom for this wave of women who wear the badge.
Do your best in everything you do, but first and foremost, enjoy it. Try to learn to balance your time. Go to occasions that are important in your life, you don't get them back.
on working with men.
You should remember that you're a part of a bigger team. Hold your head up high and just do what you need to do to get the job done, start to finish. I think a female brings to the organization just as much, if not more, than most men. We can do anything that we put our hearts to and our minds to and our souls to.
Janene Gordon, a pioneer in federal law enforcement who blazed a trail that many women have followed.